Okay, guys, welcome again to another episode. Um, this episode was the result of a poll that we did. In the
It was
poll,
appalling.
Robert, I feel that you didn't introduce yourself properly. You should have said, "Greetings, programs."
greetings programs.
Yeah,
I
that's
am a
more like
user.
it.
This it was a poll that we did. On Twitter, and for most of you, if you haven't um, seen that poll, just stay tuned to our Twitter handle because occasionally we will do a poll. But in this poll, we're trying to gauge the how many people like. There's four different properties that we were considering at the time, and it was the first one is the Matrix, and just like the poll said, and that's it, just the Matrix.
I know kung fu.
We had Ghost in the Shell, the anime. We had Tron 1982, and we got Cyberpunk 2077, the game. And we I don't know if exactly how you guys felt about that race, but it was very influential. We got a lot of people pulling for Tron and a lot of people pulling for Cyberpunk 2077. I was really surprised though that although we had some people for Matrix, it wasn't enough, and I barely saw any Ghost in the Shell fans, which was really surprising.
Yeah.
So the winner obviously is Tron, the 1982 movie, and that's what we're talking about now. But what do you guys thought? I mean, I found it very fascinating how the fans of these two properties just took over the poll, and they were just like, I remember on one day I was looking at the poll and Cyberpunk was winning. The other day I was looking at the poll and Tron was winning, and it was just like they were trying to outdone each other. What do you
Well,
guys think?
what you have to remember is that because you like one of these properties a bit more than the others doesn't mean you don't like the others. It's not a case of it's not digital. It's analog. So you like all of them, but you like a particular one, and obviously more people like Tron a little bit more than the other things. But I mean, yeah, I was surprised that Tron got that much love. But I mean, it is a seminal work of science fiction from the 80s. So people want to hear about that.
Yeah, yeah. So before we get into the show, we are going to go to our segments. Let's start the first one.
Define science fiction remnant.
And for today, I just really want to point out we have an article, a very short article. Yeah, you can find a link in our show notes by the website called sci-fi history.net about our show. And I just wanted to bring that out because the way they kind of described our show was very, um, it makes me feel good because this was the intention when we started, even back in season one. As a fan of sci-fi, I wanted to make it easy for the listeners to be able to go in and just look and easily find what they're looking for in our show. Granted, you know, I'll be happy if you listen to the other ones, even if they don't interest you, because maybe you'll find something like I've heard many times before, where someone haven't seen or heard of a property, they heard our show, and now they're interested in watching it. So I'm going to go ahead and read an excerpt. This was the publisher was E. Lee Zimmerman, and that's just how the Twitter handle is. If you want to go ahead and give him a follow, he wrote this article, and the excerpt from the article says, "The wonderful thing about this their programming is that it's available for you to scroll through, find something that interests you, and give it a listen. I waited." Through their talk about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, being somewhat unfamiliar with that personally, I found it chock full of facts and trivia that made a good good experience. And of course, the article is a lot longer than that, but I just wanted to point that out as another way that fans can define our show. What do you guys think about the article? I don't know if you guys read it, but at least from that quote that I just got from the article, do you guys uh
Is is Giancarlo muted because I couldn't hear him?
I said I liked it because I felt famous about it.
Oh, right.
but again, I really like the way that he described it, because and it makes me feel good, because that is exactly the whole point. And when I was thinking about the layout of our show, and this is one of the things that I thought of as being a podcast fan, looking at from the other side, and like how I like to see the episodes being displayed in a way that is easier for me to scroll through and find and pick what I wanted to listen. Um, I don't know. You know what, Ray? I want to ask you this question. In season one, did you find that as a listener, did you find that to be useful to you as way as the way that our structure is on our shows?
Oh, accessibility is really important. Like, if you can't find something that you're interested in, I mean, there's so many podcasts out there that you've got to try and make it really easy for people to find what they're interested in. And I think the very first episode of yours that I caught was Pitch Black.
Oh, love that movie.
And I like the movie, but I also liked your episode on it because you were talking about the orbits of the planets and how the thing goes into darkness every, I think it's 13 years or something. The planet goes into darkness. And it was really good discussion. I liked the way you were sort of breaking it down and trying to work out if it was feasible or not to have, 3 suns and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I as a scientist, I really hooked into your discussion on that one. And if you find a IP that you're interested in, and then you get a really good discussion and breakdown like you guys were doing, that just draws you into the podcast, and then you're looking up all the other ones. I mean, there's episodes in the first season I have not listened to yet because I haven't watched the movie or seen the show yet, and I don't want to spoil. So I mean, there'll be ones that'll be sitting there for a while now, but I'll probably get to them all eventually. But yeah, I mean, it's a list of stuff from all over sci-fi. Like, you just grab different things and stuff that you're interested in, and it brings out new things that people haven't seen before. So there's ones on there that I didn't even know about, so I got to go and find them and watch them and then listen to the episode and get you hot take on it.
Yeah, and I understand that. I mean, and I listen to a lot of podcasts myself, and that's one of the things too that I would do. It's like I would save an episode because I don't want to ruin the ending of that property if I haven't seen it yet. So I understand. And again, I don't know if you have been listening to this show since the very beginning of season one. You notice how almost in every episode we mentioned spoilers. Because yes,
We
we
don't anymore.
we don't anymore. But yeah, if you listen to this, there's going to be some spoilers.
It's your fault now. 1982 and you haven't watched it? I don't have me accountable for that.
Okay, so let's move on to the next segment. We are Science Fiction Remnant.
This is the Funny Science Fiction Podcast.
We are the Caribbean Science Fiction Network.
We are Monorats.
We are One Accord Level 2 Podcast.
This is Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable and Open Pike Night.
This is Sci-Fi.
And for this episode, and this is sci-fi, the hashtag has been inundated with comments about that new Star Trek show called Strange New Worlds. What do you guys think about that show coming up? I am really excited.
I mean, it was pushed by the fans, like the whole thing of Ensign Mount's Pike showing up in the Enterprise in Discovery was pretty amazing. It's a whole sort of segment of the history of the Enterprise that wasn't covered in any more than a few flashbacks in the original Star Trek and the original pilot from 1966, I think it was.
Mhm.
So there's a captain there who was a captain of the Enterprise who I think there were some novels as well, but he really hasn't been covered in any great amount. And obviously, when you get an actor of the caliber of Ensign Mount portraying a strong character like that, and it's also a character who's flawed in various ways that are explored later on in the Star Trek original series, but also he's got we know what happens to him in the future, and it's not good. So
Yeah.
he's got a dark fate, as it were.
And
So
both universes too. If you look at the Kelvin timeline, in the original, he got burnt really bad. He ended up
Yeah.
in a wheelchair. He can't barely talk. But then that's actually, if you think about it, a better fate, because he will go back to Vega and be with that, I forgot her name, and be as he was. But in the Kelvin timeline, he actually dies. So it's like, okay, you know, you doom if you do, doom if you don't.
yeah, well, but I mean, you look at Captain Kirk, Shatner, who played Captain Kirk, another performance that was really iconic and strong. And you look at Picard as well. I mean, most of the captains are very strong performances. Cisco, Janeway. Not so sure about Space Jesus, but we'll leave that up to the fans to decide. Basically, you've got this figure who really hasn't been explored yet, and you saw a bit of him in Discovery, and everybody like grabbed on. It's like, oh, this captain's really cool. We've got to see more about this captain. And they pushed, like the community pushed so hard. I love it when a fandom, because I want the Elite Army to be successful and get a sequel to Elite Battle Angel, but they wanted this. And the studio listened, and here's the show, and everybody's excited because they got what they wanted, which is kind of rare these days in sort of the interaction between fans and creatives, in that most of the time they just don't listen to the fans. It's like, we'll do what we want, and the fans will just have to like it or lump it. But the fact that they listen to the fans and give them what they want, it sort of strengthens that bond between the consumers and the producers, in that there's got to be some back and forth. There's got to be some listening going on, and when people are listened to, they feel good, and they want to be involved. So I think it was a smart move to produce this show.
It's nice that people get what they want sometimes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think in part is because we have, especially for an IP that has been there for as long as Star Trek, there's going to be a chance where there are people in power that are fans, that they are able to do something. Granted, we still have, we might have a lot of creators that are like big fans of the Star Trek universe, um, and they still have to battle the studios, but it is a bigger chance than
How is it to
before.
battle a studio? Pick
Well,
up arms. Let's go, studio.
if it was only that easy.
But
Set phases to destruct.
But I think, I don't know. I was just thinking about that. It's like, nowadays we have, it is very hard to find someone that has not grown up with the original series, um, or the next generation. And so we have a lot more people that, like, for example, I used to go to conventions, to Star Trek conventions. Conventions nowadays are a lot bigger. There are a lot more fans to those IPs. So I think that kind of helps the IP. The longer you have, the more people you have as fans. Um, so I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I mean, we're talking about this is like this from the '60s. This IP
Yeah.
is being a long time
Well,
on.
I'm kind of like uh, illiterate when it comes to Star Trek.
Oh, don't worry. We'll fix you. My
I'm not
wife has
ashamed.
asked to watch this in order, so
Be-
we're watching it in timeline order. So,
Illiterate and proud.
being illiterate to Star Trek is almost being as bad as being illiterate to Babylon 5. Hey, Robert.
Damn. So I am like the god of the lyrics.
oh
You
man.
boys call yourself sci-fi fans. I don't know what's wrong with you.
Oh, yeah, I'm telling
Hey,
you.
I say it up front.
I'm telling you.
I'm not a pretender.
You need to be re-educated.
So if you guys do follow This Is Sci-Fi, the hashtag is you can find different fans for different IPs, and you can just join the conversation. As I mentioned before, the conversation this week has been Strange New Worlds, because at the time of recording, the episode has not aired yet, the very first episode. But there is a podcast out there that I want to just shout out for this blown up of the Strange New World within the This Is Sci-Fi hashtag, and that is Open Pike Night. I don't know if you guys have listened to that podcast yet, but if you haven't, go ahead and give it a listen. It is all about, I like the concept though, where you actually sent an audio clip, kind of like being an open mic night, and they played your clip and they discuss your clip based on what your thought is on the game, on the show, which the show is basically what we just discussed is what fans wanted. We wanted more about Pike, and we're getting it. So let's move on to the next segment.
Shout out.
Go ahead, and you are muted.
Now I can be listened to. So for the shout outs, we're gonna have a shout out for Captain Peter Queen and the two cats. I had to practice that, but I could get it right. Thank you for getting involved into our Twitter post, for reposting our content too. We appreciate it. Also, Open Pike, where we're just talking about Captain Pike. There you go. And he's also one of our big collaborators to always participate in retweeting our posts and commenting in our conversations. And lastly, but not least, to Shaun, parenthesis, THTS pod, close parenthesis. Also, thank you so much for participating always in our conversations and retweeting. Please always feel free to give us suggestions, pick our brains in any questions that you have about your favorite shows or our favorite shows, or any questions that are related to sci-fi in any kind of way. And keep it coming, guys.
Yeah, we're all about the conversation. So just reach out, Twitter, and if you're a Discord user, we're trying to grow that community. So join up. Um, okay, so let's move on to the next segment.
The Outer Remnant.
And Raid has something very exciting. I don't know if you guys have seen this before. I have, and it is just totally amazing. Go ahead, Ray.
Oh yeah. So obviously by the time this episode drops, it will be a few months old. But just recently for us, at time of recording, everybody knows that I'm part of the Elite Army, and the Elite Army is well known for raising money online for various things. Flying planes over the Oscars and things like that, advertising for a sequel for Elite Battle Angel. But we also a lot of the members of the Elite Army are quite generous, and we'd end up with extra money, the more than we needed for whatever we were planning to do. And we thought, well, what would we do with it? And we looked at open bionics as an opportunity to give to needy a needy person. Basically, if you don't know about it, there's a young lady who lost both her arms to, I think it was meningococcal, when she was young. Her name's Tilly Lockey. She's an aspiring actress in the UK. And she was donated by 20th Century Fox as part of the red carpet opening of Alita Battle Angel in 2019, 2 hero arms from Open Bionics. And when we saw that, we thought, well, if we can get enough money together, maybe we can donate a hero arm to someone in need who would otherwise never get one because they don't have the money, because these things aren't cheap. One of the arms themselves costs about 12,000 US. But it costs about 20,000 US all up for the appointments, for sizing and teaching them how to use it and all that sort of thing, because you've got to learn how to move the muscles in the stump to get the arm to do its thing. So we had planned to do this a lot earlier, but then, COVID basically put a hold on all these sorts of things for a year and a half or so. But just recently, a young man, now his name is, where is it? What did I do with the tweet? Oh dear. Tweet's vanished. I had it here. Sorry about this. I've lost my screen. Samuel, that was his name, yes. So a young fellow named Samuel was selected by Open Bionics to receive the arm from the Alita Army, and just recently he had it fitted, and he said he never wants to take it off. And he was very happy about it. And he wants to get into live streaming on YouTube. He's heard about the Alita Army live stream, and he's interested in doing that sort of thing as well. So it's terrific that somebody who would otherwise, not have this opportunity is getting the opportunity. And we got the $20,000 together, and he's now the happy recipient of a bionic arm. How sci-fi is that?
Oh, yes. That was really cool. I actually saw the video. I invite everybody to go and go into Alita Army on YouTube and just watch that video. It's really, really cool. So you guys want to jump in? Your programs?
I've just been talking. You have a go, Jim Cullen.
Beep boop, beep 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 boop boop. Already do.
Okay, so now to our main event. I'm sorry?
Oh, I just thought Giancarlo might have had an out of Remnant to do. But if he doesn't, I could just mention the Alita Army Radio Chaos live stream is up to episode 113. It's been a hot minute since we've last recorded, thanks to Easter and a few other things getting in there. But we recently were talking about a major character from the manga. His name's Figure 4. And the discussion was whether he's a Giga Chad, a goat, or something else. And we decided in the end that he's a Giga Goat. So you got a combination.
You couldn't decide what he was.
Well, that's what happens on Cyberpunk. I mean, you get so many alterations that you end up losing your identity. But that's just my thought.
Or you're just finding yourself.
Yeah.
And Figure 4 is a martial artist who's trained to fight cyborgs. So basically, his martial arts, and he was, when he was learning that, fully biological. And he was able to fight cyborgs toe to toe with the strength that he built up and these techniques which could bypass armor and damage the internals of the cyborgs. So
wow.
He was a match for a lot of cyborgs, not a leader, of course. She was just too quick for him. But and later on in the story, he loses an arm, and he's a bit troubled by that. But he's a really good character, and I highly recommend that if anybody's into reading manga, that you check out um, Battle Angel Alita rather than
Let,
Alita Battle
let
Angel.
me
They
ask you,
reversed the name
his
for
weapons
the
of
movie.
choice are a screwdriver and a pliers?
No, actually, some palm strikes. But anyway, it would take too long, man.
Well, if he's a kung fu master, he just knows what screws to actually attack. He's like,
You need
I cannot pee now.
you need a power wrench and a drill driver. You'd have to be a bit quicker than that.
Awesome. Okay, so let's jump in. Today's episode is one of my favorite movies growing up, to the point where I was that kid. And for all of you who know me, you know this already, but I was always on the computer. And why this movie has an impact on me is, number one, it's like the ultimate gaming movie in that time. You know, where if you're a gamer, you always wished you could join in. You know, like you can get into a game. Um, and this is what Tron. The whole idea behind Tron is, what would happen if you could get into a computer program. Um, so I was always on the computer as a kid, and my parents, who actually we all watched Tron together, they actually named, my nickname was Tron at the time, because they said, like, they're trying to get me off the computer and out to play outside. It's like, if you keep on playing the computer, you're gonna get in it, and then you won't be able to get out. So they go, hey, there goes Tron again. So this movie, not only for that reason, which I find in retrospect interesting now and a little funny, but as a gamer back in those days, um, it was really cool to be able to, like, what if, I can get in those games and be a specific character, and not sure if this is what the it was intended when, I guess, the story was created, but it definitely was appealing to a lot more people in that way, and has become the IP that it is right now. Um, I like to ask both of you, I guess, and I'm not sure if Giancarlo's. I don't think Giancarlo's would have experienced this. I'm not sure if Ray did, but what was your um, experience the first time that you ever watched this movie?
Go,
I guess
you go. You're ready. Go first.
I was going to let Giancarlo's
Alrighty.
go first because
Yeah,
I'm a
I was
feeling.
giving him a go
I
because I always jump in. So.
I got the backwards part of the bargain because I saw the cool Tron first, and then I had to watch the other one. It wasn't bad. I had to actually feel bad that you guys had those cool CGIs back then.
I think it's kind of like the same thing for all of you who have not listened to season one. Go back and listen to, especially that episode on The Last Airbender. But it's kind of like the same thing that happened to me, where
Yes, yes.
I watched the movie first.
The only thing is that you actually made a mistake to say you loved the movie.
I still do, but
And Shyamalan, I don't know. I don't know what happened to him. He's such a good director. Wouldn't
insert
expect that
hate
from him.
mail here. But I would have to say I do agree with you. It has nothing on the series, and I would prefer the series over the movie anytime. The whole series was amazing, but the whole idea why I'm pointing it out is because I think this is what happened to you, where you watched um, the second one and did not watch the first one.
I would not compare him because I think that with all in all, Throne was a good movie. And it was ahead of its time when it came out. So compared to my take on Avatar, Avatar was poorly made. But
Yeah, no,
Tron
it
was
was.
well made movie, you know? It
It
was a
was.
very good movie, even though like I'm not a fan of the official effects all the time or whatever. I am able to see through that and admit that it is a great movie. It has good content. The story was fantastic too. So yeah,
How long ago you watched this movie for the first time?
for the first time, I think about a year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago. Okay, so you're a
I think
newbie
that
on
we
this
watched
movie.
it together. The
Cool,
first time I watched it.
cool. And here's my sci-fi influence. Okay, Ray, is your turn, and let's go ahead.
Greetings, programs. I
Hey,
love that line.
I would love to know what kind of program was that one that made the girl kiss, electrifying
Mm.
kiss.
That was the Rule 34 program. Let's see, Tron. Yeah. I mean, I was there when the last Starfighter came out and Tron came out, and they were like pivotal moments in sci-fi for special effects. In that it was new, that hadn't been done before. I mean, you look back at it now and you go, "Oh God, that looks so crappy," but you've
Tetris
got
looks
to
better.
take it in the time that it came out. There wasn't anything else. There was no the Star Wars of the late 90s and early 2000s. There was no Matrix. There was none of that stuff. This was cutting edge. This was, oh wow, this was amazing.
Yeah.
This was the stuff that made your brain go
Yeah.
as you walked out of the cinema, and the endorphins were just flowing and you were on top of the world and you were like, oh man, when can I get sucked into a computer? That looked like so much fun. And yeah, just like the last Starfighter, it's one of those things that just sticks with you. And even though it looks a bit hackneyed, and now we have so much better visuals, the story and the ideas and the visuals for what they were at the time were just next level. They were just something you'd never seen before, and you had trouble computing it. It was so amazing. And that's what I love about Tron. And I was reminded last night when I watched it again of all the little details that were ahead of their time. Like the language that they were using stuff to do with programming in the language that the programs were talking to each other in. Like they were using colloquialisms of programs, and I thought that was really, really smart.
End of
The way
line.
that they did that. Yeah, well, not just end of line, but the MCP said something to his second in command about you are reaching your terminus something or other. I can't remember exactly the term he used, but I'm going, that's a programming term. I know that's a programming term. I've heard it before. And it was just the thought that went into the dialogue to make it feel different than normal human speech. I just think it was really smart and well done.
Yeah, and I had to mention, I agree with your. I experienced the exact same thing when I walked out of the theater. This movie was, I want to say, revolutionary in its visuals at the time. Um, just so you know, the scenes inside the computer were filmed in black and white, and they were,
You don't say.
colorized. I'm sorry.
You don't say it wasn't black and white.
And
I
it
thought
was
I saw
colorized.
faces on colors.
And it was colorized at the after. I can't really recall, and I'm really thinking prior to that movie if there was another movie that has actually used that technique before. But regardless of that, the use of color, the technique itself, if you look at, um it almost feel as if you're looking at light coming from within the characters because of the way the technique was laid out, and it actually plays well with the movie. Now today, obviously, with the CGI the way that it is, most people that like Giancarlo's will find it a little hard to uh, however
It wasn't
concept.
that bad. It wasn't that bad.
But the thing is, it plays well with it. It
Yeah.
and also another thing that I was having a brief conversation with Giancarlo's. If you think about it, this was the beginning of that, kind of like the beginning of that world. This is before they discovered the IOs, and so it makes sense, in computer world, the everything moves at a fast pace. We're talking about fractions of milliseconds, so it is possible that at time, outside, the computer is actually it's actually a lot faster inside the computer. So what I'm trying to get to is, um, you it makes sense that that would look that way back in 82 because it was the initial point of that discovery. You have, and again, I'm just going through my thought process here, and you guys let me know what you think. But uh, the pixels, digitizing, all that stuff, it's growing. It was growing. So now when you go back to a movie like Tron Legacy, where everything looks very um, very like realistic, it would kind of make sense that from the time the original Tron came out to the time that Tron Legacy came out, it would make sense that there was upgrades after upgrades after upgrades, and the digitizing, the pixelation, everything within that computer will be a million years ahead of its time. So that would explain in my head, obviously, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, the differences between how 1982's Tron looks like and the new Legacy, which, by the way, we'll talk about Legacy in another episode, but I just want to point this difference. Well, I don't know if we want. Should we start with Giancarlos, since he's the new one? And by the way, you're muted.
I love Tron Legacy. There's no discussion about that.
But basically, on what I was just saying,
And I mean,
in
character wise too, like they made the main character, which is Flynn's son, kind of like a badass outlaw,
Mhm.
troublemaker. So that makes you feel also more like uh in love with the character, you know? Like it makes you like him more because he's just like unruly.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Ray? What I just said about my thought process on you
Oh,
know.
it makes perfect sense for the time. The visuals were basically what we were get, or slightly better than what we were getting in like games that we were playing at the time, or the attempt at sort of virtual worlds and things like that they were doing at the time. They just didn't have the video capacity to make it look anything like we can today. Um, Obviously, the polygons were enormous. You look at the environment they're traveling over in the light ship. The polygons are enormous. So you're like, yeah, you don't have much VRAM. Okay, forgive you for that.
There was
Is
a
it?
character. There was a character called Ram, actually, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
And when he
And,
died, everything got slower.
and just so just so you
Well, he
know,
died.
But
Like he blue screened. So
so if you, I don't know, just so you guys know, the special effects on this movie was done on a computer. It was a state of the art computer at the time that only had 2 megabytes of memory and 330 megabytes of storage. Now put that in perspective.
yeah,
It's just, I
they did
find that to be,
magic.
it's amazing. It's just totally amazing. I remember using a computer that had 64, um, it was 64 megabytes
yeah,
total. So
I had a Commodore 64 back in the 80s, about the
Robert
time
had
this
a
movie
Commodore.
came out.
yeah.
But you could only access 56 megabytes of the 64 megabytes because it had some hard coded OS
The
stuff
the
in there.
oldest thing I ever touched was a 1995 Windows
Yeah,
and a 1995 Macintosh too. I
I
remember
gotta show you.
the only two games on the Macintosh were a puzzle and Chess Master. Reason why I play chess probably.
I used to play Reach for the Stars on a Mac Plus for like
Reach
months
for the
on,
stars. I
on
don't even
end.
know what it is.
It's a space sort of you start on a planet and you build up a fleet and you go off and conquer other planets and build up a
That sounds
space
pretty cool,
civilization.
actually.
Yeah.
Oh, it was great fun. I wasted many months of my university career on it.
Hey, if you enjoyed it, they were not wasted.
Interesting that you say this, because for this movie, the directors and the creators of this movie, they had video games for the actors to try to help the immersion.
Oh, cool.
Um, But Jeff Bridges, it was hard to unglued him from the video games to do his scenes. I don't know if you
Yeah.
knew that. I think that is hilarious to me that he would prefer play video games than do his scenes. I could just visualize him saying, "I just want 5 minutes, man. 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Let me just finish this
I'm
I
level."
just
almost
got to
done with
get to
this
the next
level.
save point.
Checkpoint.
Oh man, when I heard that, I was like, "Oh my god, this is hilarious." That would be me. That would definitely be me.
Well, actually, back in the day, they didn't really have save points. You just kept playing till you died or your mother
The
interrupted
problem,
you
the
or
problem
something
is
like that.
that there was only one kiss in the whole movie, so like nobody was excited about their scene because nobody was gonna kiss the hot chick. And Ram was the one that kissed her, and then she just like kind of sneak it and didn't tell the other guy.
Oh,
Well,
man.
Tron got cuckolded, didn't he?
Yeah,
That was Tron's girl.
it's true, but he didn't know it. That's the other thing because like she kissed the other guy, then he goes away, and then the other one comes and she doesn't mention a word about that kiss. I'm like,
Oh
oh
no,
no, you sneaky bitch.
no, she was just saying goodbye. That's how programs say goodbye.
Yeah.
Wow, I need a couple of programs to say goodbye.
Another thing that I found interesting about this movie had a budget of $17 million.
Mm. They did
It
all that with 17 million. That's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, it actually made like in retrospect $50 million. So obviously
All
it
right, yeah,
it's
actually, kind of up over triple.
but here's the thing, and here's I don't know if you guys knew this or not. They got disqualified from the academy because at the time the academy felt that using computers for a movie was cheating.
Oh,
So I was like,
Don't
really?
talk to me about the academy.
sore
The
losers.
joke is on him. The joke is on them now because how many movies now don't use a computer? And
It sounds to me that they was a bunch of sore losers.
well, and also the game actually made at the time the game made more money than the actual movie, which I found that to be interesting as well. So huh, I, I just found that very interesting because it feels like that they did this movie wrong, you know.
Now, let me ask you something, because I mean, I come from a generation where video games were for kids. Now, that's not the reality. Actually, there's video games that are definitely not for kids. And I grew up on a generation where my parents thought that anime was for kids. Jokes
Big
on them.
mistake.
I got to see a lot of bouncy titties. But like when you were kids, like some video games that probably were not for kids. Like, did you grow up in the same kind of generation where your
Leisure Suit
adults
Larry.
thought the same thing?
Well, let me put it this way: you're talking to someone that his first video game console was an Atari 2600. So games they were unintentionally for kids because of the resolution limit. And Ray, let me know if you agree with this. There wasn't enough resolution to give you details, but if you think about we have a game that is about tanks. That could have been really graphic if they wanted to be. If they
World of
wanted to make it
Tanks.
graphic, where you can just you can shoot a tank, destroy someone, and have pieces of people blowing up all over the place. Where
Gears
you
of
could see
War.
that in Gears of War or Call of Duty. However, the limitations of the system with the graphics didn't allow for that game to
Whoa,
be an adult
Doom
game.
was scary for me as a kid, and it's just pixels.
Exactly.
But I was terrified. Like I was shooting and like running for my life, and I see the little face of the guy like full of like little blob pictures. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna die! I'm gonna die! I'm gonna die!
But
Well,
what do you think
it's
about
one
it?
of those. It's one of those things that when you understand what it's supposed to represent, your brain fills in the gaps, so
Mhm.
you can still react to it in much the same way. I remember seeing a porn game back in the 80s, and it was so pixelated that, like there was a single pixel for the nipples, and there was a dark
Oh
pixel
my
down
god!
there, and you sort of got the body shape, and that was about it. So,
Oh no,
Yeah.
I actually got like the raw version of it. Like there was in my times there were the Flash games. I don't
Yeah,
know
but
if you
you
guys
got
ever played Flash
your
games.
your generation got a lot more resolution than ours.
Yeah. Do you remember? I don't know if Ray played this. I think that Robert got to play it. It was called Rapist of the Jungle. Have you ever played that?
no.
It's like you see from above, and it's a shooter game, and you just direct it with the mouse and the arrows.
Uh-huh.
But basically, out of the bushes, you got Indians that come at you. You gotta shoot them. If you don't shoot them, they actually fuck you. They hump you. So you're
It,
like
it,
shooting and scared for your life. You have to go into the bushes to get like reload for your gun. But like they come out of the bushes like just chasing you.
it
You have
was
to
a
shoot them.
it was a
Who
very
came up with that?
disturbing. It was a flash game.
Yeah, my aunt used to watch
Uh,
your wife. She used to watch us play, and you just laugh her ass off
Yeah, my
because they
wife
were
got
like,
to
"Oh
watch
no,
that.
they're gonna get us!
Very disturbing.
It was called "Rapist of the Jungle."
But
And
yeah.
if we hear ourselves talk right now about how the generations of gaming, starting from like what the Atari 2600 graphics were versus like now, let's say, for example, Giancarlo's generation were flash games, you could see how I can make a point about this movie in Tron in comparison to Tron Legacy.
yeah,
How, the graphics got better and how the graphics for Tron actually play today nicely.
yeah,
I don't think, and let me put it this way. Let's say, for example, if someone decides to remake Tron and they put better graphics on it, I don't think it would play in my head. I mean, I might be wrong here, but I don't think it would be good because the graphics that Tron has right now plays in the story.
yes.
Well,
I think
it's
that
funny.
actually it will make a very good video game.
It's funny you say that because there's a bunch of guys on YouTube, the Corridor Crew, and they actually redid the light cycle scene with today's current graphics, and it looked quite impressive, but it didn't really bring anything to the scene. Like it was the same scene. There was the light walls and the bikes and everything, and they used the audio from the original because they were just redoing it with modern graphics. And for what it was, I mean, it looked prettier, sure, but it didn't bring anything new. It didn't really make it better to my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
But you're
get what
saying
you
better
mean.
than the classic one, or better than
No, we're
the
talking
new
about the
one?
classic. We're talking about the
Yeah.
classic.
Okay.
No,
I don't
we're
think you
talking
can
about the
remake a
original Tron.
classic. Yeah, and Giancarlos, you could probably speak to that better than anyone because you like the second one better because of the graphics. Although you like the
And
story,
the story also was good.
yeah. But the movie, the first one, I don't think in my head that could be remade with today's graphics. It will not bring nothing to the table. I think it might be detrimental to the story because this is supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be because computers back then were not as fast or as um, high demanding as they are today. So it makes sense that it would look like that. It would have to look like that.
Hmm, I don't know.
That's the YouTube link to the Corridor Crew episode.
And by the way, I will put that in the show notes for you guys to enjoy. And the Corridor Crew, if you want to be on the podcast, let me know. So, so you
Just
didn't
before you
agree?
go on, I was going to say that the 17 million that they spent in 1982 would have been 50.65 million today, which is pretty cheap for a sci-fi movie, really. Like with special effects. And I mean, these special effects in '82 were the cutting edge; they were the top shelf stuff, right?
Yes.
And 50 million in 1982 would be nearly 150 million today. So
It's interesting to me that this movie made 50 total, but it was considered at the time a commercial failure. Yeah, I
I
can't.
think I think that sci-fi beginnings didn't have the advantage of the benefit of the doubt from the public, because most of sci-fi public back then was younger, so it would not be considered the public. They were the kids of the public, the consumer. Would that make sense?
I think there's different generations of sci-fi fans.
Yeah, but like, would you say there's many generations before yours that are sci-fi fan like you and Ray are, or even me myself?
We'll look at, for example, we can go back to Asimov, for example. We can even go farther back than Asimov. Um, Edgar
Yeah,
Rice
but like,
Burroughs.
but
Um,
like, how big were they? Like, they are venerated, but they're venerated by people of our generations. Like, I don't know, somebody that is probably could be your father or older than him that I've met that tell me like, yeah, I love sci-fi. You know?
I have, and
Well,
actually on Twitter we have a couple. And usually, um, I don't know, Ray. You tell me your thought on this, but I have a mix bag, because half of them are more into the classic stories, which makes sense when you read a book. You can, like, and that's the reason why books are so amazing, is because you could create the scene as you read in your head. And then there's half of them that are into the classic sci-fi, kind of like what we discovered in 1951's the day the Earth stood still for season one. Um, so
and there's
they,
a link to this movie from there.
yeah, yeah. So
We'll get that.
I, I don't know what is your thought on that. I think there's a mixed bag in every
Well,
generation.
well, science fiction has always been a niche. There's a lot of people out there who just can't think outside of the everyday stuff that isn't in there every day does not compute for them. My father was much the same way. I tried to get him to watch Lord of the Rings, and he got through about 10 minutes and started falling asleep. Just anything that was out there that required imagination just didn't work for him, and that's okay. There's lots of people who, they're not very imaginative. They can't think of things that don't exist yet. And their place is the world that we live in now, and they actually have trouble dealing with new technologies that come along, like smartphones and all those sorts of things. They don't want to deal with it because it's new, and it doesn't really work for them. They're analog. And then there's the people who are always
Is
reaching,
that
always
is that the techie word for anus people? They're
no.
anus about it, so they're analog.
But I mean, analog people deal really well with they're down to earth, and they deal really well with the world as it is, but they don't deal
Mhm.
well with it when it changes. And then there's people who their
you're
minds
being
are
you're
always
being
thinking,
analog about it.
yeah, analog. Yes, that's what you're getting to, isn't it? But then there's people who think about stuff, and their mind immediately goes to, how can I combine these two things to make something new? How can I think about something? Where would this end up in 50 years? What's it going to be like? They're always looking forward. Their brains are basically creating the future
Craving.
for them. And that's part of what the science behind science fiction that we do at the end of of each episode now is about. That those people are taking what they see in science fiction and making it reality, because they're creating the future with their imaginations. And if there weren't people around who did that, one, we wouldn't have science fiction because nobody would be interested in it. And two, we wouldn't get innovations and new technologies because there'd be nobody thinking outside the box. So both of these types of people have their place, but obviously the three people in this podcast are in that second group.
Well, I am in another group too because I think outside the box, but I also take a shit outside the box sometimes.
You need fresh kitty, little boy.
Yes, it would be a lot more convenient.
Mm.
Hey, is your cat coming today? I love when he comes into the podcast, man.
Oh, I had one cat in here at the start of the podcast, but he asked to leave as soon as we started recording. So
I
he's
bet
gone
you just
outside.
I bet you just gave him catnip, so he just don't bother.
Neither of my cats care about catnip. They're just foodaholics. Foodaholics.
Foodaholics.
Nice, nice. Um,
But yeah, I
I
mean,
find
going back to originally what you said, Robert. This movie and the way it was made was so different for that. None of these people who are like down to earth, I don't think they would have been able to understand the paradigm, because basically, if you had no experience with programming, and I got to say that when
Or
this movie came
appreciation.
out, well, appreciation, but if you hadn't sat down with a magazine and typed 5 pages of weird text into a ZX80 to try and get it to play Pong or something like that, then you wouldn't have an appreciation for what was going on in this movie. You've got to understand the paradigm and get the context around what's happening in the movie to really appreciate it. And back in the early 80s, but very few people had technological devices that could do this sort of thing. I mean, the
I was
original
programming in
Macintosh
BASIC.
boxes were in a few homes, and that was about it.
I was programming in BASIC, so it's kind of funny that you mentioned that because I can really relate. Like print Robert, line 10, print Robert, line 20, go to 10, and
Uh-huh.
run, and it's just Robert. So that that weird mention that I think it was a very small niche of
Mm.
people that were either programmers or into programming at that time. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, because I can relate. Now that you mentioned that, I can
Mhm.
see it. I did not see that before.
Well, nobody goes. Well, very few people. I shouldn't say nobody, but very few people go to a movie that just doesn't mean anything to them because they have no experience with it. They need some form of connection to the story and the context of the movie to make them want to go and see it. Like, somebody who just can't stand courtroom drama, or has never been to a courtroom or doesn't understand what it is, won't go and see a courtroom drama because they won't understand it. I mean, they'd have to be dragged along by somebody else who was into courtroom drama, who's trying to get them interested in it so they got something to share and talk about around the water cooler, on Monday morning. But yeah, it was a very niche movie at the time, and I'm actually impressed that Disney actually went ahead with this. This movie and The Black Hole, which we should really do as well, because that's another awesome Disney sci-fi that
Black
came out
hole?
around the same time. The Black Hole. You've never seen The Black Hole?
No,
Really
doesn't
cool
ring a
Oh
movie.
my
bell. Maybe I
god!
have. Doesn't ring a bell.
Really
It
cool
it,
movie.
it it's got a brilliant opening soundtrack. I love it. But yeah, the Tron and the Black Hole were two movies that Disney took a chance on, and they were completely out of left field for what Disney was doing with all their animated movies and things like that at the time. And I really applaud the decision makers for doing that, and taking a chance on something new and creating something that, when it came out, wasn't necessarily going to resonate um, with movie-going audiences, but they were ahead of their time.
It's
And
funny that you mentioned that because animators at Disney they refused to work in this movie because they felt that computers were putting out of business, and in fact, 22 years later, after this movie came out, Disney closed their hand drawn animation studio in favor of CGI. So you know,
well, everything moves along. I mean, we find better ways to do things, and things get automated and robotically um, produced and things like that. And unfortunately, you can't. Society and work situations won't stay the same forever. Things will move forward, and you
yeah,
can fight it and end up out of a job, or you can move forward with it.
yeah. So
Get on
thi-
the wave of get left behind.
yeah, yeah. And I don't think I don't think that they were necessarily right. How the animators refused I don't think that it would have made a difference if they helped or not helped. It's not. I don't think it was all. It's about they're helping their careers go out of business. So and why they decided not to help with the movie. I think is all about like what you just mentioned is how technology moves along, and it would continue to move along. There's there's a saying that is you have to be comfortable with change. And if you're not
People
comfortable with
hate
change,
change.
yes,
That's like
yes,
that's like the one thing of human condition. People do not like change.
and that is the only constant.
Yep.
Yep,
Change is
that's
the only-
life. People don't like life.
We
Change.
we change. Like what is it? Every 7 years, we're a completely different person.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, there's only three things you can be sure of in life. That's death, taxes, and change.
And pooping.
Well, that's change. That's a change from your food.
See, we're alchemists and we don't know it. We can transform this food into something else that can be used as fuel. You know that in India, actually, they use poop as fuel.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I don't know how to feel about that.
I
Well,
don't
at
recommend you
least-
smell the smoke.
Some, hey, man, it's some useful shit.
Well, you can use cow manure for fuel, for fertilizer, for building materials. You can use it for all sorts of things. You just
Some
put
people
straw
actually
with it and make bricks.
Some people get high on that shit.
Yeah. You know what? Going back to programming.
We have one.
See, I wish I had like a toilet flushing sound right now.
I don't know if you guys knew, but the word Tron in basic programming language is actually a command. It's a debugging command. It's traced on. So I think they let me see.
I thought that Tron meant runt backwards, which I don't know what it means. No, north.
No,
North.
Nort. Are you sure you're not missing the S?
Lord. That would be Trons
Snort.
then. He needs
Snort.
more than one.
Snort. Three
Hey,
lines of
you know what?
cyber.
You know what we didn't do? We didn't do the plot. We completely skipped over the plot. We were too excited.
That's how excited you guys are about the movie.
Should I do the plot? Should I run through the plot?
Yeah, well, a little late, but yeah, why not?
Why not? Why not?
Why not?
Why
It's
not?
out of order processing. It's an advanced feature of the podcast.
Maybe we can maybe we can pause at certain areas and we can talk about I don't know. Go ahead.
Programming. Okay, Kevin Flynn is a leading software engineer formerly employed by the computer corporation Encom, who now runs a video game arcade and attempts to hack into Encom's mainframe system. Mainframe's kind of like the cloud these days, if you don't know what a mainframe is. However, Encom's master control program, or MCP, halts his progress. Within Encom, a programmer, Alan Bradley, and his girlfriend, engineer Laura Baines, discover that the MCP has closed off access to the projects. When Alan confronts the senior executive vice president, Ed Dillinger, Dillinger claims that the security measures are in an effort to stop outside hacking attempts. However, when Dillinger privately questions the MCP through his computerized desk, he realizes that the MCP has expanded into a powerful virtual intelligence and has become power-hungry, illegally appropriating personal, business, and government programs to increase its own capabilities. Dillinger rose to the top of Encom by presenting Flynn's games as his own. The MCP blackmails Dillinger with information about his plagiarizing Flynn's games if he does not comply with its directives. Laura deduces that Flynn is the hacker, and she and Alan go to his arcade to warn him. Flynn reveals, besides the fact that he's probably like 28 going on 12, because he's a bit of a boy. Flynn reveals that he has been trying to locate evidence proving Dillinger's plagiarism, which launched Dillinger's rise in the company. Together, the three of them plan to break into ENCOM and unlock Alan's Tron program, a self-governing security measure designed to protect the system and counter the functions of the MCP. Once inside ENCOM, the three split up and Flynn comes into direct conflict with the MCP, communicating with his terminal. Before Flynn can get the information he needs to reveal Dillinger's acts, the MCP uses an experimental laser to digitize and upload Flynn into the ENCOM mainframe cyberspace, where programs are living entities appearing in the likenesses of human users or programmers who created them, which I thought was a nice touch. Flynn learns that the MCP and its second-in-command, Sark, rule and coerce programs to renounce their belief in users. The MCP forces programs that resist to play in deadly games and begins putting Flynn into duels. Flynn meets other captured programs, Rem and Tron, between matches. Partnered, the three escape the mainframe during a light cycle match, an arcade game Flynn wrote and programmed for and is skilled at. But Flynn and Ram become separated from Tron by the MCP Pursuit Party, which is a bunch of tanks. While attempting to help Ram, who was wounded in pursuit, Flynn learns that he can manipulate portions of the mainframe by accessing his programming knowledge. Ram recognizes Flynn as a user and encourages him to find Tron and free the system before derezzing, which is the equivalent of programs dying. Using his new ability, Flynn rebuilds a recognizer vehicle, a construct taken from another one of Flynn's games, which is Space Paranoids, and later disguises himself as one of Sark's soldiers. Tron enlists the help of Yuri, a sympathetic program, and at an IO tower receives information from Alan necessary to destroy the MCP. Flynn rejoins them, and the three board a hijacked solar sailor to reach the MCP's core. However, Sark's command ship destroys the sailor, capturing Flynn and Yuri and presumably killing Tron. Sark leaves the command ship and orders its de-resolution, but Flynn keeps it intact again by manipulating the mainframe, while Sark reaches the MCP core on a shuttle carrying captured programs. While the MCP attempts to absorb captive programs, Tron, who turns out to have survived, confronts Sark and critically injures him, prompting the MCP to give him all its functions. Realizing that his ability to manipulate the mainframe might give Tron an opening, Flynn leaps into the beam of the NPC, distracting it just after kissing Yuri, who was Tron's girlfriend. What the hell? Seeing the break in the MCP shield, Tron attacks through the gap and destroys the MCP and Sark, ending the MCP's control over the mainframe, allowing the captured programs to communicate with users again. Flynn reappears in the real world, rematerialized at his terminal. Tron's victory in the mainframe has released all lockouts on computer access, and a nearby printer produces the evidence that Dillinger has plagiarized Flynn's creations. The next morning, Dillinger enters his office to find the MCP deactivated and the proof of his theft publicized. Flynn is subsequently promoted to CEO of ENCOM and is happily greeted by Alan and Laura as their new boss. End of line.
Nice. Nice. So, one thing that I want to bring up, it is a conversation that I had with my wife while we were watching this movie, which actually I'm going to bring up a fact before I go into my theory. The laser bay, the Encom laser bay, was actually real. I don't know if you guys knew this. This was an actual target bay for the 20 beam Shiva solid state laser facility at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Um, it was kind of cool. Obviously, it doesn't do what it implies in the movie. Just want to make that clear when I said it was real.
It fires a laser. I'm sure it just doesn't, put people back together again after it's blown them in the little bitsies.
Exactly. So that leads me to what I was going to say in the conversation with my wife is she, we're actually into Star Wars. Star Trek right now. She wanted it to start Star Trek in timeline order. So, and this is probably why she's bringing this up. But she says This is kind of like a transporter, or the beginning of a transporter, which actually played nicely into the evolution of this technology in Tron Legacy, which is a movie that we will probably do in another episode. So stay tuned. But it the theory is that through that laser, you get converted into a computer bit, or stored into a computer storage. And after that, which I think is a main differences between this and the transporter, which uh, she made me think that this could be, or could have been, the in the Star Trek universe, the beginning of a transporter. How you have to be able to put it into um, a storage to be able to then do whatever you want to be, whatever you wanted to do, which and I can see why Encom was trying to do this. It could have been the end of the shipping industry. Not only that, but you imagine the potential. Say, for example, you, just like they did in the movie, you're in code in orange, and you have that orange. What is there to prevent you from making a copy of that file and sell six oranges from that one orange you scanned? So
Well, that's much like we get with 3D printing today. Once the printing template file is created and shared online, anybody can print that thing. So it's much like that today. I should have saved that for the end, shouldn't I? Oh well.
but it is, if you think about it, it's kind of scary, at least for two industries. What would happen to the shipping industries? Say, for example, you place an order on Amazon, and you just go to your bay and receive that. It could be an instant delivery. You pay for it, it automatically materializes, and it could be a copy. Say, for example, it is an apple, or a banana, or an orange. What happens to the farming industry? What happens to the shipping industry? And those are things that I was thinking. It's like, wow, you know
So basically, you're talking replicators from Star Trek.
exactly. And the reason why I'm thinking it this way is because this is where that conversation with my wife left me to, in my head, when I was thinking about this. It could have been the beginnings of replicator. Actually, that whole replicator translator technology comes from the same place.
Well, in Star Trek, they sort of cover that thing in that replicated items don't taste quite the same for foodstuffs. So the real deal is actually better because it just tastes better. The replicators in the early Star Trek ships required like a base carbon material, which, depending on what you used, would change the taste of the things that were replicated. But in later Star Treks, it was energy into matter. It was the whole conversion process. So if you have enough energy, you basically can create anything you've got a template for. But obviously, it doesn't quite taste the same as the real thing because it wasn't grown and doesn't have the atoms that it would have of metals and things out of the soil and all that sort of stuff. So
But I don't think
there
that's
is
a
a bit of
detriment.
variation.
I don't think that is a detriment for many people, because there was an episode on Enterprise where you have someone. He's the helmsman. Can't remember his name right now. Mayweather. Um, that he actually
Isn't that a boxer?
he grew up in space. He grew up, they call him the children of space. He was born and raised in a freighter, and he actually grew up eating the foods from these replicators. And there was an episode, and I can't really pinpoint what episode that was. I think it was in season 2, where he's having a conversation with his mom, saying that, when I was in San Francisco, I had a real strawberry once, and it doesn't taste the same. I prefer the one from the replicators,
Well, it's what
because
you used to.
exactly. So I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking. I mean, granted, at the beginning, this technology might have that problem. Some people might, okay, I'll have an orange, even though it doesn't taste the same, but then generations might come in that they are used to that, and then they would prefer the fake over the real one. I don't know. It's just a thought that I was having when I was watching that scene.
Well, everybody's a bit different, it's personal tastes. Some people would like the original. Some people like cup of noodles. It's it's not real food, but it's edible. But it depends on what you like.
What do you think, Giancarlos, about that conversation that I was having?
Yeah, my mind was flying to some other topics. Like that's maybe where sexuality kind of detoured. They rather it has a hole. It's okay. He wants it. No, but I think it's just shaped up to the reality of what you were used to.
Mhm.
So if you've been always eating replicated strawberries, for you there's no such a thing as real ones. That's just unexistent.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too. I mean, I have a real life uh, um, scenario where, like, when I grew up, we had a lot of McDonald's. Really liked the McDonald's fries, and and the chicken nuggets, right?
Salty.
I do have their burgers, but nowadays, with age, I can't really have their burgers anymore. It doesn't really play well with my biology. So I really like the chicken nuggets. Now, my wife have not grown up with McDonald's, so the first time she tried that, she hated it. She said, "Well, that this tastes like o- old oil," um,
E-I-E-I-O.
which I I I can believe it. I mean, I don't even ask what it's in a chicken nugget because I don't want to stop eating it. But
Oh, you should see the video how they're making
no,
it.
no, no, no. So
I still eat them.
I
Yeah,
understand
I'm
where
going
she's
to
coming
hell.
from. But then again, the taste difference, it plays well in the conversation that we're having, and how I grew up eating McDonald's, and I kind of like that taste, and she hasn't, and she can't really
You want me
and
to ruin it for
stand.
you, or you just have to use two words, and I'll ruin it for you?
No, no, thank you. So I just wanted to bring that scenario because it plays well into the conversation that we're having. How someone that has grown up with a thing, it tends to prefer that thing over, even though if the thing might not be the real thing, because real chicken nuggets, they taste good, and I have to admit that. But there's something about that you are used to growing up. Does that make sense?
Yep,
Well,
it
you
does.
form your opinions and tastes and things as you're growing up, and everything that you have after that you compare to the original. Now, depending on whether or not you've got what they call a plastic, well, I wouldn't say personality, but a plastic a preference setup. You either plastic means fluid, like able to flex. Then you either say no, I want the original because that's what I grew up with and that's what I think is that thing, or you can be someone who's more flexible and go, okay, well, I remember what it was like when I was a kid, but this is what's here now, and I'm accepting what's here now. So some people get more flexible as they get older, and some people get less flexible as they get older. It's just a factor of how your brain works, basically.
Yeah. And John Carlos is going to be stiff as a board.
A part of me will be.
Oh man. So I'm going to start with John Carlos because he said basically he watched this movie um, just basically a year ago for the first time. Um, what would be if there's one thing that really caught your eye in this movie for 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 the better, you know? Um, when you watch this movie for the first time, I know that the experience is always different. Um, but what would that one thing be It could be the storyline, it could be anything within the movie that really caught your eye that you find really interesting, concept wise or any other.
To me,
Hmm.
mm, I will venture to say that when he got back into the world and basically he was seeing how the programs interact between each other, what caught my eyes the best was the NCP.
Hmm.
It looked kind of odd to me, and then I was like, so, and I mean, they talked about it like it's the NCP, but there's a lot of more NCPs that they just call programs. They're NCPs too.
Yeah, it's just the master computer program that guides, kind of like, I don't know if you want to call it a kernel, not necessarily an operating system,
Commanding program, if you say your operating system.
because like you have kernels in the operating systems, and that's what controls,
Kernel, isn't that like mashed corn?
well, depends on how you look at it. But yeah, I can see where, yeah, I can see that. Is it visually or just the concept of the NCP that really called your attention?
uh, Both. Even the concept, because at the beginning of the movie, you're seeing that the NCP is kind of telling the guy that is the head of the corporation, like I've gotten 2,000 and so many times smarter than you since you created me. So he's belittling him and telling him like I'm superior to you now.
Wow.
So these NCP is actually telling a human what to do, even though he's locked up in that world
Yeah.
and trying to really be world domination bad boy.
Shades of Terminator.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Um, this could be a loaded question for Ray because I believe
Most of them
he's
are.
because he kind of have the same experience that I had with this movie. So it might be difficult to just pick one thing, but the same question goes for you. What would that one thing, could be visually, could be story wise or concept wise, that really resonated, or that you find very, that called your attention the most the very first time you saw this movie?
They turned programming into an adventure.
Mm.
Something that's so dry, because I did programming in first year university. Oh my God, so dry. Um, you've got to have one of those brains that just, can just get into the nitty gritty and the technical side of it and just pound it out. You almost have to turn your imagination off to do programming and be good at it. Because otherwise your imagination will be screaming in agony after about 20 minutes, because it's all processor, no imagination programming. And I mean, it's different nowadays, but that was back when you just typed in weird text and it made stuff happen. But yeah, the fact that they could turn something that was basically, it was kind of like a programming manual for a pretend computer system into an adventure. And again, like movies like Ghostbusters, the writing was really tight. There was no scenes that were superfluous. There was no sort of dead end conversations or things that weren't related to. They used every minute of this movie. It was only an hour and 35 minutes long, so 95 minutes end to
Yeah.
end, and they packed so much into it, and it was just really well written. I thought the screenplay was really refined, and the actors, I don't know how they felt about it personally, but they really got into the roles and played them well. And the reflection of the real world people and the programs that they wrote looking like them in the digital world. I thought that was terrific. That because, and this was in the dialogue as well. They were saying before Flynn went into the computer, I can't remember if it was Flynn or somebody was saying, "Oh no, it was the old guy. It was the old guy who obviously wrote Demand." because it was the same actor who played Demand. But he was saying there's a bit of everybody who programs these things in the program. And that was leading up to the fact that they were playing the parts of their programs in the machine. So it was just really well written. Really, it all hung together, and there was all these little lines of convergence. And it is a really good screenplay, I thought, and a really good story and a really good adventure. And then they went and made it far out the way they filmed it. So, I mean, it gets better and better.
Yeah, I would have to say for me was the visual. And
I knew someone would have to say that.
well, here's the thing. It kind of I was 12 years old at the time. Okay? Consider what I came from. The very first sci-fi movie I saw was Logan's Run. So I already had
Which looks better
hunger,
than this.
which I already have a hunger for. But the visuals to me, at the age of 12, I was just in awe looking at all those colors and how that, it was kind of like my prime into, you know, wanting to be a developer, wanting to be a programmer. And I was at the time when I was reading a lot, on that topic and seeing this, it kind of like, it blew my mind into the fact that like that is what it could have been inside a computer program or inside a computer, inside a chip. It kind of makes sense to me, but it's kind of like the impression. It was just very impressive to me, and when I was looking at those visuals, how it looks. Like if you pay close attention to, for example, let's say one of the arms where the color could be red, could be blue, was coming too, and the way they designed it, to me it looks like it was alive inside. And I don't know. I mean, go back and look at one of those scenes, and you'll see what I mean. Where it's not a dynamic. It wasn't a static, just color paint, right? So the way that they design it makes it look so dynamic, so alive to me. The colors were like almost vibrating, and it was all throughout every scene that you see where they were inside the computer. After the fact, in retrospect, it shocks me the more, because 12-year-old, right?
Mhm.
I'm just basically starting life. So in retrospect, after I rewatch of this movie, and I realized that those scenes, which is very easy to tell as an adult, you look at it and you see, oh, that they were actually shot in black and white. Um, but it's knowing that was done in my 12-year-old mind, it was just like, wow, and it kind of loses its magic a little once okay, this was shot in black and white. What This is why it looks like that. Um, However, it's still, as an adult, I find that little. I know it's a small thing in the cinematography on this movie, but it makes it feel so original. And I don't think I've seen, and nor will I ever see, because of the how CGI is nowadays, something filmed in this way or that looks in this way. So that's what I found to be more shock and awe to me about this film. It's just the visuals.
Well, yeah, I mean, as a 12, well, I was 12 or 14 or something, 13 or something like that. Watching the movie, yeah, the visuals were very captivating and original and unusual, and for somebody with a strong imagination, it did, draw the eye. And I was watching it again last night, and they animated just bits of the environment.
Yeah.
And there was like energy pulses going past and colors changing, and when they drink from that pool, which is supposed to be just pure power and like electricity, and the little circuitry on the outside of their virtual bodies, glows brighter because they're powered up. And, it's all these little details that they put into it that made it hang together as a whole. Like I was saying earlier, with the parts of the vocab that they were using inside the machine that were like programming lines, and at the end of line, and the greetings programs, and some of the other words that were used that were straight out of programming, made it feel more real, like factual, rather than. I mean, they spent a lot of time on the visuals. They spent a lot of time on the scripting and the words that were used. And it all tied in to make this feel a lot more real than a lot of other efforts that perhaps they didn't spend as much time on, and there wasn't so much love injected into, would have produced as a final result. And that's why I think this movie stands a test of time, in that it has an excellent script, excellent acting, excellent visuals that were so unusual that you can go back and watch this today and say, well, this is a landmark in sci-fi for these reasons. And it all just came together. Like there's a few movies that are like that. Obviously, my favorite one is Alita Battle Angel, which, is what I consider as an equivalent to Tron, but in the late 2020s, the late 20 teens, in that, everything came together and it made something spectacular that you don't see very often. And Tron was one of those movies. Well, at the time, we didn't have any other thing to compare it to, so Tron was the bee's knees.
Timing, too little, too late.
Yeah, Giancarlos, you'll never understand.
Well,
Thank God.
If you get to experience these things in chronological order, it gives you a completely different feeling for it, doesn't it, Robert?
Oh, the good thing is that I don't get to get a shitty version of Alita. No, I'm just kidding.
I can't argue with him. I just can't.
The worst thing
You try, but you can't.
The worst thing that Robert put me through, and I have nothing against Star Trek, is when he made me watch 1954 Star Trek.
54.
Yeah, 1954. It looked like a little toy hanging on fishing strings on a black blanket.
I think that might have been 66.
No, it was 50s. I remember it was like 1950s Star Trek, like
Star
before
Trek,
the series. Yeah, it was Star Trek. Like the Galactica ship looked like a toy hanging on strings, literally.
Are you sure it's not Star Trek? It wasn't Galactica, right?
No,
Star Wars.
No, it wasn't Star Wars.
Because I showed you the original Star Wars where Chewbacca wasn't even Chewbacca. It was just a fat guy.
Yeah, you showed me that, but it was not Star Wars. It was in 1954, and I thought it was Star Trek.
Because Star Trek is 1966. That's why I'm a little confused.
It's something like before it was known or something like that. Some backstage stuff you showed me.
Yeah,
I'll look it up. I'll look it up and show it to you.
Yeah, I think it's Star Trek, the original. It was 1966.
I want to show him the original Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy TV series from the late 70s.
I haven't watched the movie.
You're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, sure.
Just don't watch the movie first. Watch this first, and then watch the movie.
Yeah.
All right.
That cheap placeholder special effects from BBC, you got to love it.
Although, I was watching some of the older Doctor Who's, and they were really not that. I mean, am I getting? I'm going to ask you because I can't really ask Giancarlos, but because he hasn't seen it. But I don't think I see that. I mean, I know I'm familiar with cheap BBC effects for sci-fi, but I don't really see. Did I see it, or am I masking it in my brain for Doctor Who?
You might be masking it in your brain.
Okay, thank you. Thank
well,
you.
this is the problem. You see, when you don't know any better, things like that and Thunderbirds. Like I watched Thunderbirds in 1973 or 74. I was really young.
Yeah.
when I first saw Thunderbirds. And besides the whole sort of animation thing, which was a bit off-putting, I mean, there's rockets and all sorts of funky things going on, but at the time that was wow. And then you see the CGI stuff that they were doing. There's a new Thunderbirds which came out in the noughties, I think.
Yeah.
And that was all CGI special effects and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it looks better, but it doesn't have that sort of retro feel. And retro sci-fi is now a thing,
Yeah.
and people are getting back into it. Much like LP albums went bye-bye when CDs came in, and now some people are going back to them because they feel that the sound is warmer than the digital sound that you get off CDs or audio files. So there's always people who prefer the old stuff for whatever reason. So I mean, it all has a reason to exist, just not for Giancarlo.
Well, I'm going to come on defense of Giancarlo's.
He's taking camera off.
He turned the camera off. For all of you who are watching the video, you are not missing anything. But for you who are listening, he just turned his camera off.
He put his hat over his face and turned his camera off.
I am going to go on his defense right now and say that the reason why he's in the show is because I have converted him to a sci-fi fan. So obviously he's a new sci-fi fan, but he hasn't seen everything yet. So I'm working my way up there. So what do you think,
Yeah,
Giancarlos? Did
he's
I did a
trying to
good job on
convert me.
converting you?
You're managing.
Awesome. Okay, so before we move on to the next segment, is there any final thoughts that you have on this movie before we move on?
Oh, I got a couple of things. So apparently, they originally wanted Flynn to be more comical. So they're actually going to get a 30-year-old Robin Williams to play. Could you imagine Flynn played by Robin Williams?
Yeah, I don't.
That'd be
I
over
like
the
Robin
top.
Williams. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It would have been too over the top. I mean, Flynn was that forever 12 years old, everything's a game, jokey kind of guy who finally realizes, 3/4 of the way through the movie that this is important and has to man up about it. And his story arc is quite classical in that, somebody who has been done wrong by because he was not careful enough. He was playing around too much and got burnt. And he's still trying to be that sort of playboy, jokey guy. There was one in every class at school. But deep down he's hurt and he wants revenge and rah. But he's been jokey on the surface, and he eventually sort of mans up and grows up a bit and realizes that there's a lot more at stake than his personal pride. And goes to help others, and it's a classic story, and one that really resonates and is quite interesting. So yeah, I don't think Robin Williams would have given it the gravitas that it needed. I think they did a much better job.
It would have been a complete different movie.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But even a young Jeff Bridges did a good job there, and the fact that Bruce Boxenleiter is Tron, who he also plays Commander Sheridan in Babylon 5. Hint, Robert, you need to watch Babylon 5. I'd completely forgotten that it was Bruce Boxenleiter that played Tron, so it was great to go back and see him in his young days, getting his sci-fi on again.
Nice. Giancarlo, any final thoughts on this movie? Again, I want to say I'm sorry because I met you.
I honestly am surprised they haven't made a very good game about it.
There is a game. There was a game. There was, and that game made a lot more money than the actual movie at the time.
Okay.
There's actual some. I think there's a retro game out there for spell. What was that? Paranoids, and I
Paranoid?
played that one, and I also played Tron, which I have to say it was really good. So I don't know. I wonder if it would you could find it on Steam nowadays as a retro game.
Oh, I could look that up. I have Steam.
But it was really good, and it basically helps. Um, and I wonder if the movie had anything to do with the sales of the game, because when if you are one of those gamers at the time that saw this movie, you wanted more and you were not going to get more. So the only way that you could get more of this story is just playing the game. I
Tie-ins.
remember. I'm sorry.
Tie-ins.
Oh yeah, yeah. And there was I remember playing the arcades on these things too. um
Mm.
well, at the time it was already, this was a 80, see, 80, 86, 87 is when I played the arcades for this. um so it was already a little older by the time I never got to play it on the arcades when it came out. But there was those machines from back in the time for 1982 that were like there, and yeah, I got to play. I think I got one of the few. I was one of the few that got to play the arcade on this, but I remember playing it on the computer as well. Did you get to play the games, Ray?
Oh, a little bit. They weren't very common down in Australia, so I mean, I think I saw when I went to Sydney one time, because I grew up in a little town called Albury, on the New South Wales Victorian border. So I actually grew up in the country. But one time when I went to a school on a school excursion just to the capital of New South Wales, which is Sydney, I actually saw a Last Starfighter game, which I hadn't seen anywhere else. And I think, was there a light cycle game? I think there might have been something, or somebody ripped it off, one or the other. But I remember playing something that was like the light cycle game, kind of like a more sort of motorcycle-y version of Snake. Well, actually, my son plays one now called Slither.io, which is kind of like light cycles in that you've got these snakes running around and they eat up the things on the ground. They get longer, and then you've got to try not to run into the tails,
The
because if you run
motorcycle
into a
looks like the
tail, you
snakes,
die.
actually.
Yeah, but it's a
Yeah,
similar
it was.
concept.
It was exactly like that. The Tron, a slow cycle. It actually, I think it was for arcade, and it looked exactly like that. It's just like all you see is the lines. So you have to try to speed up in front of the other guy, and try to cut him, and all you see is just lines, color lines
Hmm.
moving.
Yeah.
So I remember that. I remember that one.
Hmm. Hey, there's also Easter eggs in this movie. Did you realize?
Hmm.
There's a number of Easter eggs. It was interesting. I was looking up when Easter eggs actually began, and actually Alfred Hitchcock started doing Easter eggs back in 1937 in his movies. And the Easter egg was him. He would appear in all of his movies, much like Stan Lee in the Marvel movies. But he would appear as a bit part in all of his movies, and he was the original Easter egg. But in Tron, there's 4 well-known Easter eggs. The first one that we see is in the cubicle, Alan's cubicle.
Oh yes.
What
There's
was it?
something written across on one of those long printouts.
Hold on,
Do you know what it is?
Giancarlos.
Yeah.
You're gonna love this one. This Easter egg, you're gonna love this one because it's based
It
on a
said,
show. It's based on an episode that we did in season 1.
That's what I was saying. There's a link between Tron and
Oh.
The Day the Earth Stood Still. It says, Gort Klatu Narata Nikto.
What?
The
Yeah.
day the Earth stood still, 1951.
When they go back in and he goes to his cubicle, you see it written, because it's the first time they actually show his cubicle from above and the other side. All the other times they show it from the corridor, but they actually show inside his cubicle, and you can see it written across the top on the pinboard.
Interesting. I didn't even catch that.
Oh, there you go. And the other one that really stood out to me was you remember the big display panel inside the command cruiser that
Yeah.
Sark is looking at? And it's got this
Mhm.
sort of big yellow circle thing with all these lines and stuff and concentric circles in it and stuff. And then outside of that looks almost like a maze. And in one of the scenes, the lights change from what they're displaying in all the other scenes. It's actually showing Pac-Man. You can actually see Pac-Man sitting there and there's ghosts running around.
I actually saw Pac-Man on the screen inside of the game.
Yeah.
I saw it. I was like, well, what's Pac-Man doing? So I was expecting seeing like Pac-Man game inside of the reality.
Nice.
But yeah, this is just in the background and no references made to it. It's just you look over his shoulder and there's Pac-Man. You go, what? It's Pac-Man. So those two I hadn't noticed before. I guess maybe I'd watched this movie but not watched it, sort of listening to it as you do when you're ironing or something. And Mickey Mouse is actually in Tron because it's
Mickey Mouse?
It's a Disney movie. Yeah, Mickey Mouse is there. So about 3/4 of the way through the movie, there's a scene where the solar sail is flying over various digital terrains. And if you look very carefully, you'll see Mickey Mouse's head done in a grid pattern.
Ooh. Interesting.
So you'll have to go back and have a look at that. It's freeze framing.
And I have to watch that again. I can't believe it.
And do you remember the line at the end where Dillinger was talking to the MCP near the start of the movie where he was talking about hitting the Pentagon?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
MCP was going to hit the Pentagon. And at the very end, the MCP demands, keep those programmers out of my system and get me that Chinese language file I asked for. Remember that? And it's never referenced again in the entire movie. But if you watch the credits, there's a section where they're listing the people in Taiwan who worked on the graphics, and it's all in Chinese.
Oh.
That's the link.
Nice.
So there you go. There's 4 Tron Easter eggs that you may or may not have noticed. So you might want to go back and pick those ones out.
I want to have to watch it again.
And for all of you listeners, if you watch it again and notice, let's reach out to us on Twitter. Let's have a conversation, and let me know what you guys.
Discord.
And on Discord,
jump on a Discord. Yeah, we can chat about it on Discord.
I never sleep, so I'm always in Discord.
Well, I know not many people use Discord, so I mean, it would be awesome if everybody joins in. The whole idea for our Discord is to have one central location for us to discuss sci-fi, and we have different locations for different properties. And if you don't see a property in there that you want to have a conversation about, just let me know, and I'll create it right away. So yeah, that's the whole idea. Is just to have a place where we can talk about what we love. Cool. So should we move on to the next? Should we? Let's do it.
Pull the trigger.
Science and sci-fi.
All righty. Well, actually, this one's a little bit tricky. Some of these may not seem particularly science and sci-fi, but it's more the effect that this. That's what she said. It's more the effect that this movie had on future IPs and things like that. So let me ask you a question. Seeing as we've done Sword Art Online as the first episode of this season, I'd like to get your guys' responses to this question. Is Sword Art Online an isekai? You guys know what an isekai is? You know what an isekai is?
No.
Okay, so an isekai is basically reincarnated in another world. That's the rough definition.
Okay.
I wouldn't say.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Because the real person plugs into this other world. Right?
Now I'm interested in the comment.
Well, in an isekai, you get reincarnated in another world, or you get transported to another world. You don't always have to be reincarnated.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But
so kind of like Subaru.
Generally, exactly, Subaru. But generally, that's an isekai. ReZero is an isekai. But generally, there's no way back. A lot of people are trying to find a way back, but generally there isn't a way back. It's a one-way trip. But obviously, it was not a one-way trip in Sword Art Online. And in future episodes, they're in and out all the time. But in that, if some people do consider Sword Art Online a type of isekai, perhaps not from a purist standpoint, but it's got isekai tendencies. And if you think about Sword Art Online being people going into a virtual space and getting trapped in there, that's exactly what happened to Flynn.
Yes.
Mhm.
And
Tron, in some form or other, is an isekai, and it's one of the originals.
It's true.
So there you go. Disney made isekai before the anime.
Before it was cool.
The anime industry did. So there you go. There's a hot take. I'll get hate mail for that one, I'm sure.
But it does make sense, Disney making the first isekai, aside from the Japanese, anime. But cool.
But yeah, isekai is a huge genre. If people don't watch much anime, it's a huge genre in anime at the moment. And, it's all power fantasy and fun stuff like that. But, this is a power fantasy as well. Flynn went into the computer and he had user privileges and he could affect things that no other program could. So he was OP, basically. So it's
everybody was like, he's a user? No.
Well, there was also quasi-religious things going on there. Apparently, there was a version of the script that had a lot more religiosity in it. Is a word for you, religiosity. And they sort of decided to prune a lot of that out. There is a couple of mentions about religious fanatics believing.
Well, at the very beginning, when what was it? Was it Ram? I forgot his name. But there's my user. I'm just I'm just a programming for accounting, and my user and the guys just, oh, there you go, another crazy religious fanatic, and kick them inside the cell. So yeah, there was a religious connotations throughout the entire movie about how the programs, there are certain programs believe their users are controlling them or programmed them throughout the movie.
Well, Tron, when Tron finds out that that Flynn is a user, he goes like, "Oh, so you have a plan and you've got everything worked out. You know what's going on?" It's like, "No, mate, nah, it doesn't work like that. We're as confused as you lot are."
Man, that could be a shock, You meet your God and it tells you, "No, I'm just like you."
Yep. Screw things up more times than I get them right.
The real essence of Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Okay, so I've got a couple of others before we round this out, but I do expect that after Tron in 1982, possibly might have taken a decade or so, but I reckon there would have been a few executive desks with that functionality, the touch screens underneath the smoky glass kind of deal. You can get similar things. They cost upwards of $10,000, but you can get desks with touch capacity screens in them now. Obviously, the software has a lot to do with whether it looks like the way the Tron one worked out or not. But
I know that they made a real life bike.
A light cycle.
Real bike of Tron.
The light cycle.
Motorcycle, yeah. It doesn't run much. I think it does like 60 miles per hour.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool. How long?
Yeah, those sort of tires that run on a sort of a two-wheel reverse spin thing. You can't get a huge amount of speed out of them because you get friction after a while. But yeah, I mean, you can still make it look like it.
I just run on it until it catches fire. Who cares? It's Tron.
No fires in cyberspace. So yeah, you can actually get a desk that kind of looks like that executive desk with the touch panels and the pushing the buttons and all sorts. I mean, you just have to program it.
I can get a freebie and just put a couple of neon lights on it.
It could be bad on your neck if you think about it. I was just looking at that. It's like
the angle wasn't great.
Yeah, I mean, I work looking at computer screens all day long, and I imagine just having to look down all the time to do my. Oh yeah, I would have no neck at the end of the workday. But it looks cool.
Yeah, it does look cool. It's got the rule of cool going for it.
Yeah. Who cares about the physics?
Who cares? Who cares about the chiropractor's bills?
Yeah, next time I meet Giancarlo, I'll be like,
Hello, everyone. I am Jabba the Hutt.
oh my
Try
god.
to Varata necktie. Uh, so the last one that I've got on my little list for today is now this is quite prophetic in the way that they represented it, and that is the widely networked version of 1982 that they had, which didn't exist at the time. Obviously, computers were still in early phases, and certainly consumer products were not connected to each other very much at all. There was like 8700 baud modems, maybe, if you were lucky. Well, there may be 3200 baud modems. But, over the phone with the whole at the start. And they didn't communicate very fast. You'd decide to download a JPEG and you go off and get a coffee and come back and make it, and you maybe have half the picture.
Watching porn on the 90s, pixelating pictures coming down.
You had to go there, didn't you?
Yep, I had to, man. We all went through it, but we don't want to admit it.
Dear. Yeah, porn was a lot slower in those days. So they sort of it was suggested that all the computer games that they were playing in the arcades were networked to the MCP, were networked to this virtual world that Flynn ended up going into. The whole thing was networked, and obviously at the time, all of them worked off, very basic, not even as powerful as a PC from the 90s, versions of chips and things like that the computer games ran on in the arcade boxes. If you've ever seen inside an arcade box, there's not much to it. And they were not networked. They got power and that was it. But in the world of Tron, everything's networked because they're all playing on the game grid. And I don't know if it was clear to you, but in the game, Tron was playing for the users. So he was playing for the guys with the controller on the big arcade box, and the other program who was the red one who was working for the MCP was playing for the MCP or the computer, as you would play, you against the computer kind of deal. And obviously this sort of networking didn't occur for another 20, 25 years to that level, where we now have virtual landscapes and virtual worlds and things like Another Life and all those things where you can go in and travel around it in VR and sort of experience that sort of thing with game realms and all sorts of things that are reminiscent of what we saw in this movie 25 years beforehand.
I started on the internet in 1991, I believe, and one of the things that I did in collaboration to have.
What is this thing called email? I don't understand it.
Yeah, I remember
You got
that
mail.
one. I was like,
You got mail.
why do we need a mail? But I remember having a computer that ran a BBS, a bulletin board, and how the typical
Oh, I thought
com-
BBS was big bullshit.
the typical comments in the house, like my parents would say, like, get off the phone. I want to call somebody. So I have to disconnect. And because of this reason, my dad would get another phone. So then I can free one of the phones and then use for the computer.
Second line for the computer.
It was the second line for the BBS. And now I can have chats where people can get in and we can talk between two people. And that was like a big thing. So, but my dad still didn't appreciate it because now I'm using two phones.
Oh my god.
But yeah, it's gaming came a lot later into that. I mean, there was games that you could play on the computer, but they were not really networked. I remember one of the first network games that I played. And you're probably gonna get a kick out of this. I don't remember. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to look at the name. It was like a space invasion game. It was kind of like a grid where you make your turn you save the file, you email the file, the other person will download the file, open the game, play their
Play the
Oh
turn,
turn.
my god!
save the file, email it again,
Couldn't
and
be a gamer back then. You.
Yeah, it was game by email. Before that, there was actually game by
That's too much
posting discs.
dedication to play. That's like playing
no, but the
battleships by
game
email.
the game looked good on the computer. It just needed that file to see what was the turn of the other guy.
Mhm.
But if you look at it, you have explosions, you have ships to go through. It looked really cool. It's just it wasn't network, so it needed that component.
2 days later, motherfucker, why you haven't played your turn? Oh man, I'm sorry. I've been in the hospital. I had a car accident. I don't care. I'm playing with you.
1990 in I was studying at the Australian National University and living on campus at a dorm, and the dorm had a room of Mac Pluses,
Nice.
the boxy ones with the floppy drive, and we ended up creating our own little gaming club that used to play in there, late at night. And we played this game, which was a Star Trek ripoff, but it was a space combat game, and you played it in real time against other people, and it was the most fun.
That
But it
sounds like a
wasn't just shooting. You'd have a combat, and your ship would get damaged, and you fly off and hide and have to repair your ship, and you have to decide the order in which things got repaired and how much you'd repair it before you move on to the next thing. And you could repair it so it was running slowly but not completely fixed. And you'd have to juggle all these things, and then you get discovered behind an asteroid before you finish repairing. It's like, oh shit, and you have to try and run away. And we had such fun.
It was a
with that
LAN party,
game.
right?
Oh yeah, it was like LAN party, and we'd have like 12 people playing. When somebody's playing a Klingon and they're cloaked and they uncloak to fire, and you're like, ready, gotcha. And then they'd run off, and try and repair, and it was so much fun. And it was all line graphics. There was nothing fancy about it, but it was just so much fun. The gameplay, it was. It's one of those fond memories.
Oh yeah, We can't.
But that was
LAN parties anymore.
1990, which was 8 years after Tron. So it took that long just to get a LAN game going, let alone networking the entire thing.
Exactly.
But now your refrigerator is networked.
Yeah.
And you can when things running out, it'll know you're running out of milk and it will order your milk for you and stuff like this. The networking that we've got now is what they were predicting back then.
My fridge just ordered a filter that was missing.
Nice.
Like the filter ran out, and it's like ordering filter through Amazon.
Can I get a fridge secretary too?
It's his personal assistant, which also makes him drinks.
Yeah, I don't think his fridge is that good.
Oh,
The menu is only ice and water.
Don't say that too loud. His fridge will get upset and refuse to give him any ice for a week.
Yeah.
That's okay. He actually has an ice maker. And he's sitting right in front of the fridge.
He said, "You see, if you don't make me ice, this one will do it." So
Your replaceable smart fridge.
Wonder if his fridge is named Yuri.
they might be talking at night, because they're in front of each other.
Probably like, this water tastes pissy. And the fridge is like, we did it.
Don't network your toilet to your refrigerator. Just don't do it.
Yeah, don't get a Bluetooth.
That is a
toilet or
bad
something.
idea.
They're all water connected. You're gonna be like, it's just like poo.
But yeah, obviously, there was that they had the solar of the light sail ship, which was what was the term that was used? It was a simulation. So they had simulations, they had games, they had IO towers and all these sorts of things that were going on in that virtual space that the programs were existing in. And that sort of thing wasn't seen until things like Another Life came along, where you could build pretty much anything. and create stuff out of your imagination and make it into a virtual world. And then we saw things like that, and you could do similar sorts of things in Minecraft eventually. You could have shared Minecraft servers and people making things in there together that replicated what they've seen in IPs and stuff like that. So, yeah, and these things eventually come along, and you can sort of trace them all the way back to Tron, which I thought was quite nifty.
Yeah. Awesome. So, if you guys like this movie, let us know. I mean, I wonder how many of you listeners have never seen this movie.
Rewatch it at your discretion.
Giancarlos can speak to the newer generation.
Don't get
It was a
hung
good
up on
movie.
the visuals.
It was
Enjoy
a good movie.
enjoy
It
the
was a good
plot.
movie. It
Yeah,
has
it's
a good plot.
like I told Giancarlos. Concentrate on the story, and then let me know what you think. And hopefully that. I actually enjoy the visuals, but then again, I watched it when I was 12, so there's a big difference. I have those, you know,
The
those.
concept of visual had changed a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it has, just like everything else, and technology just moves on.
It's called
And
evolution.
Well, you've got the nostalgia of having seen it a long time ago, whereas other
exactly,
people don't have that.
Yeah, he has the
exactly.
nostalgia. I just have the nos. No nostalgia.
But once you concentrated on, if you watch the movie for the story, I think you appreciate.
Yeah, it's totally worth it. It's totally worth it.
It's
I
really
say
worth it.
that without no step backs. It's a very good movie.
Awesome. So this concludes this episode. Um, thank you very much again for being with us for another episode of our show. Just remember, if you like to discuss this or any other episodes for our show, we are on Twitter, so just reach out. And if you are a Discord user, we have all the links in the description, so join up. We are trying to grow the Discord, so join up, and let's talk about all this stuff. We're all of us very hungry for the sci-fi conversation because it's something that we love, and I like to think that you guys also have the same kind of love that we have for sci-fi. So let's join up and let's talk about sci-fi, and use the "this is sci-fi" hashtag on Twitter. Again, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.
Ciao, programs.
Log out.
End of line.
No.